Welcome to the first episode of a new producer interview series where I sit down with some of the most exciting names in electronic music to break down their creative process. Today, we're joined by Eloquin, a rising force in UKG, break-oriented music, and even drum and bass. Eloquin has made serious waves with back-to-back #1 singles and releases on Nightbase, Crucast, and his own imprint, Primitive UK. Supported by heavyweights like Joyryde, Lorenzo, and Flava D, he's quickly becoming a name to watch. In this session, Eloquin shares his personal techniques, sound design tricks, and workflow inside Ableton, showing you how he crafts his signature sound. No matter what genre you produce, there's something to learn from his approach. He's also got a new sample pack, which you can learn down in the links below. Also comment and let me know who else would you like to see in future episodes. Hit that like button, subscribe for more. Let's dive right into it. Eloquin, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you again. It's been a couple of years now, I think, actually, since we last spoke.
What you been up to, man?
So, I think I finished uni since the last time I spoke to you, and then just been smashing the music. I had a sort of fairly quiet year release-wise, and then just been stacking up the productions in the back catalogue. So hopefully this year I've got much more regular releases coming out. So very exciting. Just trying to strip back my production. I think it's easy when we overcomplicate things. And so that's what I was hoping to show today, is that actually less is more. And you can go in this producer arc where you start off and then you learn all the techniques, you try and bundle it all in, and then you come back down the curve again and you realize, actually, I didn't need half of that stuff anyway.
I find that philosophy of less is more always comes into play. Sometimes we want to keep adding and adding and adding, and then we find that once we strip it down to the main groove, that's where it's at.
No, I think it's my biggest critique of my own productions is sometimes I listen to it and then you listen back, oh, this little effect and I go in and I change it, and then in the process of changing it, I mess up something and then it's just a cascading domino effect. And so if it sounds good, like just keep it like that and use your ears and trust your ears, because that is the most important thing. Sometimes a version 1 bounce with a limiter on it sounds better than a mixed down version that you spent hours and hours tweaking. It's weird, but it's just the way it works sometimes.
I've been down that road. I know exactly what you mean. It's like the very first mix down, just super dirty, sounds so much better than the one that I put 10 hours to fix. Sometimes you just gotta go with the feeling.
It's almost like for me, I sort of visualize it as you spend 90%, you spend 10% of the time making 90% of the project. So you can get a rough structure and you can get all that, but it's the last 10% that takes 90% of the time. And it's really just like the fine tuning details. So I think for me, I've just been trying to I've been doing like 1 hour challenges. If you've seen on my Instagram or TikTok, I've been doing sort of 1 hour challenge. You basically just get as much down as you can in that hour, and using that as a sort of like trying to flex that sort of muscle of just trying to get stuff done. And this is what 𝗙𝗟𝗢𝗪 actually did. This is why he's so prolific at producing. And he basically started off with the FL Studio demo, and basically you can't save, you can only export. So he just used to just knuckle down for a whole night, get everything done, export it, and then you obviously couldn't save it. I think that's a really valuable skill for producers, to sort of start from scratch.
Exactly, and that's really how it should be. I like how you talked about how you can like mess with different genres, and that's really exemplified in your music. I checked out your latest track that you put out this year. I just love how the tempos and the beat changes in it, but like it still all sounds really consistent. So I'm curious, what do you want to show us today?
Well, I was actually going to show that one, but I think, as we were talking about earlier, after I bounced it out, I kept tweaking it, and it sounds different now.
Yeah.
So this is a new one. I was just wanted to show one that's sort of it's not finished yet. It's in the process of that sort of last 25-15% of being done.
Yeah. And I think you have some really interesting bass processing chains. Would love to see that as well.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little preview of what it sounds like. We can dive into the sort of
Yeah,
sound design of it.
Can't be social with no media.
So I've got a sort of exposition of sounds there, but when you're talking about the post-processing, what I've been trying to do recently is just really fine-tune the layering elements. So you've got a sub here, very simple. I've just cut everything above sort of 200 hertz. Really, don't need anything more than that. And then I've got a middle harmonic. So this is just an 808 sample from the preset from my sample pack.
Great.
So clean 808 number 2. And what I did with this, I then I put in a harmonic here.
Okay. So this is
So
the mid layer.
this is the mid layer, yeah. So you've got bin 7.
Okay.
And this is what I'm trying to like show people. There's all these wavetables. And I kid you not, I always use basic shapes. I don't use anything else.
That's cool.
So that's the full circle where I was like, add this monster one here and add this. But for the stuff that I'm trying to make, it's just harmonically rich.
Okay.
So it's just a sine wave with a bin 7 harmonic.
so-
I think that's just
So you had a sub layer, so that's layer 1, and this the second layer is the same preset, but you've added this second harmonic onto that 808 preset. Is that what I'm seeing?
exactly, yeah. And then I've basically taken the sub out,
Okay.
and I've put a filter. Sorry, it's this one here. It's like an 8th dotted note rhythm. So it's going on the frequency here, and the level.
Yeah.
And so I'll just give you that on its
Yeah,
own.
let's hear it on its own.
So it's got a bit of reverb on it.
Yep.
It just sort of fills out in that range where it's just enough harmonic after the sub that it gives a nice little sort of when it tails off, that where that gap there, you want to sort of fill that gap enough but not be too messy.
So I see that you're using the LFO to create a wobble, and the LFO is set to the cutoff of the filter as well as the frequency of the EQ.
Yeah, this is essentially just sort of boost the resonance. It's all sort of resonance, and so I've just sort of tailored, like you can do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sounds more juicy.
So it's just adding a weird tonal element to it. Resonance and harmonics, essentially, you're trying to shape the sound as much as possible. And then I have added this one as well. So there's a section here just for variation, which what people can sort of take away from this pack is so I've put this LFO here. See how that's moving upwards?
Okay.
So you can actually, the way you do this, or where I do it, is you get envelope and you put it on the y-axis like that,
Yeah.
and then you go to the matrix, and then you can apply it to. So I did LFO5. I don't think you can actually drag. That's why you had to do it like that.
Oh, okay.
So then I did LFO5 on the LFO bus 1. It's called here.
Okay. So what is LFO bus 1? What does
So
that
this means that you can show it more exaggerated here. It's
mean? Oh, it's moving that point up.
exactly.
So LFO 5 is controlling the amplitude of LFO 3.
And so this is how you can create more complex sounds by throughout the bar, you can have it increase.
Okay.
And so I've also added this to FM of B.
Okay.
And then you can also do, I think I've got it on, you can add it to the cutoff as well. So this is where you can bring in more.
Yeah.
So you can see you can get some really cool movement in the sound by adding a bit of FM and increasing the filter.
Right.
So this is basically just lots of. I haven't really decided on an idea yet. I'm sort of playing around with the different FM frequencies, and I'll maybe bounce it out like I have this one here.
Yeah.
And then that means you've got it there in case you want to change it, but then you can add some other stuff as well. So that's what I typically do when sound designing, and
Okay.
and
So
then
you typically you would, so that I see the mid harmonic is muted and you've bounced it to audio.
yeah, so that's usually what I do, just to have. It's almost like a safety net. I'm quite bad. Like I like the way that sounds are, and then I clone it, and freeze it just in case. And then I can go through tweaking it again. It's almost like a checkpoint in a video game.
Okay.
And then the final layer, or just the noise layer here, is
Yeah.
just adding that top. It's really fine, and you can sort of EQ here.
Yeah, it's hard to hear through Zoom. It's like it doesn't have those
It
frequencies.
probably won't even.
Yeah.
So you can add different erosion on top of this. So
Okay. So you like
you can,
erosion? What's that
yeah.
for?
So this adds a noise to it. So there's 3 settings, but you can really. So it's probably not even going to pick up that much on Zoom, but. Or there's this one, which is like a bit crusher.
Okay.
But in context with the whole thing, it just fills out that frequency range.
Right. Okay, so it adds a bit of grit on top.
And I would do as well a stereo imager on this to make it wide,
Yeah.
or alternatively you can just clone it and pan it left and right hard
Right.
like that.
Okay.
And that's just an example of it's like a sandwich, or it's like a trifle. You got
Yeah.
the base, you got the middle, and then you got the cream on the top layer. So by having these sort of just like spatial elements, essentially like a jigsaw puzzle, where they all occupy, the top will be this bit, the mid will be here,
Yeah.
and this way it all neatly fits together like a puzzle.
So do you set specific crossover frequencies? So the sub was cut off at 200. So would you
Yeah.
cut out all the sub at 200 for the middle, right?
Yeah, so this typically what I do sort of around here to here. It varies on each bass sound. So this is just this sort of quite harmonic, minimal 𝗙𝗥𝗘𝗦 sort of style. But yeah, usually depending on what the synth patch is, if it was a saw wave with a bit more upper harmonics, I'd probably do it like that a little bit more.
Okay.
But just because it's quite a pure sine wave, there's not really much going on apart from it within this region.
Yeah.
And so that's typically the way I'd structure it.
And so I see you have 3 layers. Do you group? I see they're in a group. Is there any processing on the group?
Yes. So this is the big bass group. It's a bit messy with all the stuff on there. I usually group them together with a decapitator.
Oh.
So this is just you don't even need it to be on like much at all. But what it does is sort of gives a cohesive sort of compression to it.
I guess it glues it all together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Why
a
don't
nice
we hear
glue.
it
And
before and after the gluing?
yeah, this is a good idea. Let's just make sure it's there. So here's a bit before. And then here's with it on. So you don't want to do it too much. This is why I'm tweaking the amount of it, because the sub.
It's subtle, but you know it's gluing it all together. All right, so tell us about your sample pack.
Yeah, so basically I've been working on this for quite a while actually, just for my own production's sake. When I'm starting a song, I want to sort of get a vibe down as quickly as possible. So then I can sort of figure out creatively what direction I want the song to go in. And so essentially I've got a wide range of breaks. I've got some drum loops, sort of garage, all the way through to 140 dubstep towards the drum bass as well. So I've got a couple breaks here. As well as some slower breaksy stuff. And this basically means I can audition some. So if I've got my drum group here, I can drag some into just the top loop section there. And then what I typically do is sort of play around with the basses. So I've just got a basic patch from we've got 808s. Typically is reliable, sounds good, and then I've got Reese's as well. Those I find are the two sort of foundations in my production. So we can drag this into here, maybe get a Reese in there, or maybe even a Foghorn. Who knows? So already you've got a quite cool starting sound, and you can then chop and change and audition different things to see what sort of vibe it is. It essentially just gets the idea down as quickly as possible.
I see you got some wub sounds in there. What other sounds you have in there?
Wub's always probably my favorite section in there. So 16th dotted wub step.
Woo!
This one's quite cool as well, I think. Yeah, and so there's lots of stuff that you can mess around with, and all the stuff is macroed as well. So we can add some FM, add some distortion. You can sort of really just tweak things straight away, and you can get quite a different sound. You could chop and change a different wavetable, and just in a few seconds, already a different sort of timbre, a different sort of tone to the sound. So it's really for people just to learn, and sort of when I sort of download patches, I reverse engineer them. I try and see what makes them tick, and really by dissecting it, it means that you're developing those skills to then start from scratch. That's the aim for the whole pack, really.
That's amazing. And I like how you encourage the users to try the macros and even change up the waveforms, and really they can take this as a starting point and create it, make it their own sound. So
some cool stabs. Christ Reborn, what's that one?
Looks like there's a lot of awesome sounds. There's samples and presets, and anyone that's interested, you can learn more down in the links below.
And sometimes, again, I'm still learning in the sort of mix downs. I might even separate the sub out of the group, and then maybe have it separately to have it really clean, because I noticed it was compressing the whole group as a sound, or maybe it just needs to be turned down a little bit.
Yeah, I see you have a compressor, then the decapitator. So what's the compressor?
Yeah, so this is for the side chain here. So this is going for, it's triggering on the kick and the snare.
Okay. How important
so you can hit,
do you think is it to side chain the sub to the kick?
Arguably the most important thing. I'd say, apart from EQing, it's the one thing when I found out how to sidechain is like 𝗙𝗥𝗘𝗦 titanium, that pumping effect. I was like, oh my God. As soon as I found that out, it just, it made me really excited to produce, because you could get that sort of professional sounding ducking effect. And what I do, actually, I got this is from producer Hoax, who's on hospital. He taught me this. So I've got it triggering to a sidechain, which is not the kick. It's a white noise trigger.
Okay.
So I can show you what it sounds like just on its own. So it sounds like this.
Yep. Okay.
So that's the kick and the
kick. That's the kick's pattern, right?
And also the snare as well. So it's boom. Basically, that's why it was cut so frequent.
Okay. So anytime there's a kick or snare, it's ducking the bass.
Yeah. So drum bass. This is, the sort of signature kick pattern, and the snare. These are the things that want to punch through in the mix. And this is a 140 track. So yeah, this is two things that you want to leave space for in the mix. So if I play it now. Make sure that's muted. So that snare is really punching through now. If it wasn't on, it would be a little bit muddy and sort of a little bit messy, actually.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely one of the most important things, I'd say, for new producers to learn.
Yeah, I find it really depends on the type of drum sounds you're using. I think there's two approaches. You could either sidechain, or you find kicks that don't have conflicting frequencies, right?
Yeah, or like a transient kick, like a short
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I sometimes I just have it in MIDI because it means I can copy and paste stuff in. And so that works for me, but exactly you're right. Yeah, it doesn't if it's not a really long thumpy kick with loads of sub, because that's where it eats up quite a lot of the room when it's being sidechained, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's sick.
But yeah, there's also this is a signature Eloquin sound here.
Yeah.
It's just basically a square wave, or it sounds the same as a square. It's a little bit more rich in harmonics, but
Okay, so that's done with adding harmonics to the sine wave.
yeah, the same sort of thing. It says a bin 5, but
How do you decide which bin you use when you use the harmonic editor?
it's just I mean we can test it out sonically. It sounds very similar. There's a little subtle. So I think really it's just a subtle difference, but sometimes it's basically a resonant square wave, like that sort of acidy sound that I've definitely have rinsed. I do enjoy a square wave. It's probably one of the most powerful waves. So that's basically what it was before, and I just tweaked it. It got some resonance here again, as I was saying before, with the envelope 1 on the cutoff. And then post-processing, we've got some distortion here. And then the way I sort of sound design is imagine there's like different gates, different defenses, if you like. So this first filter is shaping this raw. So let's take off this last one here. So it sounds like this. Really rich, like loads of frequencies. This is the first layer of defense. You can shape this by having. Then you take it back down a little bit. But it's still, after distorting it here, it's still got that high end. So this is where the second or almost final layer of defense is a second filter, which I've got on. So this is an 8-bar thing. Sorry, carry on.
Can you show it to us without the distortion so they can hear?
Yeah.
So let's turn
So
off
this is it.
Yeah, so it sounds like a filtered square, and then you add the distortion for a little more high end.
Yeah, just crank it. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And then this second one, which is being modulated by a third LFO. This isn't really relevant because it's actually not. It's only playing on the first beat, so you can ignore that, guys.
Okay.
But this one here is a second. It's very similar shape to this, but it just gives you a little bit more control. You can do it a really short one.
Yeah.
Or you could get a little bit longer, and that really just shapes the distorted, so it gives it another layer of shaping the sound.
Yeah, it sounds really juicy.
And then you can just basically change the length. I was messing around with this one, so you can do one long one instead of a triple.
Yeah.
You can't really go wrong with it.
Classic UK bass sound.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is quite quickly we can go from here, and I can go into the pack, and we can go into wubs. So there's 170 presets in here.
Sick.
But if I go to Speed Garage Wub, this is another example of square wave and how it's used, but it's just got a longer attack. And then we can do a little melody here.
Media.
There you go, sorry. I think that's just number 1, and I think the second one actually is a bit. There you go, there's a classic warpy. And that's just got you can add some FM. So all of this is macro here, so you can go a little bit of FM. Okay. Bit more. And you can sort of mess around with the different. hear that top
This
FM
is a
layer
bit
coming
more
through.
gnarly. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. A bit of drive here. Yeah, so you can have a load of fun with it and just use these macros to sort of mess around um, with the whole thing.
I think
Lots
that
of
I heard there was some on the
second drop?
second drop. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Hopefully, yeah. This is I extended out. It was just 140 for this a halftime section for that,
Yeah.
and then I added in another section because I felt like it could go for a little bit longer.
Sick.
So we've got the basses are down here. So this is a very chaotic project. I can't lie.
Yeah, so like some of those that sound distorted.
Yeah. So this is actually, so I used mainly the same bass, so the typical 808 lead that I'd started off with. So
Yeah.
see, where's that second half? So many sections. Okay, I think it's this one here.
Here. Let's just. I'm gonna just since we're going into this now. Let's just start as if picking it up from
Yeah.
the start. So I heard your track "Lose Your Mind" into some really cool, gritty bass sounds. Why don't you show us some of the processing on how you got some of those sounds?
Yeah, sure, man. So yeah, this second drop I've got just I called it a elastic band bass, like a bit. It's got a lot of like modulation to it, so that goes like this. So as we said before, the layering comes into it a lot. So I've got a sub just with a 16th note LFO on it. It's just keeping that movement.
Yeah.
Very minimal processing, just EQ and a sidechain.
So you got rid of all the tops. It's just playing the sub frequencies.
But you've still got a bit of wobbling. I think I might have actually done it on the on the course tune, course pitch. So I think this is going really slightly on the actual pitch of the note as well, which is
Nice.
It's not really noticeable, but it just gives it that bit of movement. And then you've got the middle bass. It really just sound like a weird.
So
Like
is it using the same preset for that mid sound?
Yes, yeah, it's the same preset. Again, harmonic. This has been 5 on here.
Okay, so
really
it seems like that's kind of your technique, is that you have multiple layers. You have the sub layer, and you might have a mid layer using the same preset, but you might add an additional harmonic on the harmonic editor. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this one is super minimal in processing. I think it's got more of that high end in there, but you can see you've got distortion again. The 16th note is going on the filter, so the last sort of barrier defense, but it's got very minimal processing on it, which is what makes it kind of sweet actually, because you got distortion afterwards, but it's where the sort of grit comes in.
Right.
So I've sort of boosted this mid section here, cut the lows, side chained it, and then rift is where it sort of comes alive. So it's this preset called 𝗙𝗟𝗘𝗦. I'll take it off. And then I turn it on, and it's got a bit of. So it's just I think it's a slight 16th note modulation as well, but on the drive itself. So it's
Nice.
it's adding to that, and yeah, then it's just a bit of decapitator on top of that. Just a little bit to glue it together, and then a noise layer, just similar to the other one I showed you, and that seems to sort of cover the frequency range. Oh, that's not even playing. Sorry. This one here.
Okay. And is
and
this
this
also the same preset?
This is I can show you. It's slightly different, actually. No.
Okay.
So this one, if I can take off the EQ, it's got a +4 harmonic. It's up 3 octaves, and it's got an FM from the other one. And this is a sawtooth, so it's got more harmonically rich sounding. But then I've sort of taken out this, so it's sort of like that. It doesn't not really too much to it, just boosting the high end. It's also in here. There you go. It doesn't really sound that pleasant, but this is where you've actually got. Have you tried this plugin called Chroma?
Yeah, super cool.
So I put that on it, so it goes from quite a gritty sound to, and you can pick out the key you want.
Yeah, that's a really neat application for this tool.
So basically, making a really disgusting FM sound, make it sound quite harmonic and nice again through Chroma, and a tiny bit of reverb and soothe, just to take off some of the disgusting grittiness, and that's it's just a really quiet layer as well. It's not too loud, but altogether it's
Can we hear it without that layer so we can hear the difference?
Yeah, sure. It's subtle, but I do think with the stereo width of it as well, it adds to stuff when you're on headphones.
That's a bit more depth. I get it. Cool.
And then these growls over here, I said that we could have a look at these. Yeah. So the way I processed it, I think these were just the square bass, the main one from the first drop. Okay. But I bounced them out with Rift on, and a certain preset made that. I was like, wow, that was sick. So
yeah, I like how
it's sort of a happy accident with these sort of ones here, where. And then this other one, which is so it's Rift has added some stereo width onto it, some sort of phasing. I think it was just a preset I was flicking through, and that made this.
So you added Rift to it, and then you bounced it to audio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically that added some stereo width, some phasing to a mono sub, so you can hear the difference between. So those I like to bounce off, and this is from 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗪 as well. He does this a lot, where he has different bass stabs with stereo widths. One might have chorus on, which sort of widens it up. The next one might be mono, and that sort of like back and forth, it creates quite a nice sonic experience when you're listening on headphones and and live.
So those bounced bass sounds, do they have any sub frequencies underneath, or have you removed?
Yes, no, they've got sub frequencies on.
Oh, okay.
I've actually boosted them.
Okay.
So this one, just thought it could have a little bit more in the sub. Right. Okay. Sometimes you could just layer another sub under it, but the way that the rhythm is in here, I just sort of wanted to try and keep as much of that as possible without trying to.
Keeps it cohesive, right? Yeah.
And so sometimes you really can really sort of, if it sounds good, just see this one. I think I have actually layered, so it really just depends on the sound. So you got but this one is I didn't layer, so it's just so it really depends on each sound. And then I go some more. I think these ones here, these are quite fun to make. That's a sub layer, and then the top layer.
Yeah, I like those. So what's happening there?
Let's have a little look. So it's same bin 5 harmonic on the sign. It's got a bit of attack, this one, so it's a little bit of a wub into it. And then I've got FM. So take this one off, see what it sounds like without the FM. Just leave that. Still sounds quite cool, but when you add it on, you get a nice like middle range where it's not too FM'd. And I've also kept it coming in here, so this is a slightly different shape to the first envelope, so it's coming a little bit later, but it gives a little bit of weird movement. It's not perfect. It's not on beat.
Okay, that's interesting. Usually we keep that oscillator muted, but it's interesting that you introduce it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just trying to think outside the box. Sometimes sound design does get really tedious, like just doing the same thing over and over. So sometimes happy accidents turn out to be good. Yeah. And then I think the real character actually comes from chorus. So if we take that off, obviously distortion as well, as per usual. You guys have seen this in all my sounds. And this delay, without that, really flat. And so the chorus widens it up. And then this delay gives it life. It gives it that little sort of slap back decay, like really, really short 16th note.
When you use distortion, the serum distortion on your bass, is there a particular algorithm you like to use?
Well, it really, really depends. I mean, tube was just on there and just crank it up. When you're driving it this heavily and you're filtering it, it's actually not going to do too much difference. And we can check here. So if we do like a diode, probably you could tell the difference. But when it's a sort of a soft clip or a tube or like an asymmetrical, I usually use these ones. They've all got slightly different tones, I guess, but I think it's really down to preference. And I think this is just... So
your go-to is tube, soft clip, and asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical, yeah, and then tape saturation is also really good.
Okay.
They're all very similar sounding. And then if you really want to drive it home, like these are over the top.
Yeah.
If they're used right, they can be really powerful as well. But yeah, so this is the second section here. Let's let this whole thing play out, see what it sounds like. And these, again, happy accidents. And I think hours before the deadline I had to submit it off, I was saying to Will, who runs Primitive with me, I was like, let me just mix down one more thing. And I was just adding these frantic things in because I thought they just add a bit of so much movement. As you said, growls.
Yeah, those are really nice.
So that comes from the same patch. This is a bounced out. So I think it's this one I can show you. So you've got an octave up on this, and then it's got a detune of 8 voices. FM again, that's the cheat code in this. Similar processing here. I've got a boost in the high end this time, a bit of reverb, and I think I think it's Rift that's changing it a lot. So that's without it. It's just really driving it home. And then you can just add some modulation, which is what I've done to make the growl. I think I've just gone on the main, so this one here, and I've just moved it to an 8 bar and done it a trigger. And maybe just done it like that. Just automated that, and that's how it sort of turned into this. I just bounced it out to try and not lose it, because it often happens when you're tweaking sounds here and there. And then I've just followed that with these heavy sounds with just a breath sample like here to give it a bit of space, because it's quite sound design heavy.
Nice.
But yeah, that's pretty much. You've seen the techniques I use. They're quite similar in most of the basses.
I like it. I guess a lot of producers have trouble with what I hear is keeping because there's so much happening with the bass. How do you keep your subs sounding nice and deep, right? Yeah,
it's the age-old question in producing. And to be honest, it's just less is more. For the producing of the mixing of a sub, have it really minimal. So the sub of the main, all of my subs have just got no distortion on it apart from a little bit on here. Okay. So I've kept the post. I've dropped it down to about there. Again, this filter is dropping it back down again. So I'm shaving off the harmonics all the way down to 200 hertz and just keeping it very unprocessed.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, and you can have it quite loud. When it's unprocessed, you can boost the volume of the sub, and that's how you can achieve that sort of fullness to it.
Okay, so other than the compressor, there isn't really much processing in the sub. You want to keep it less is more, like you say.
Yeah, as pure as possible, because the more you dabble with it, you put distortion on it, it turns into more of like a square wave, and then it does lose the fundamental harmonics to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main tip for me.
What are your, I guess, favorite go-to plugins when using processing? I've seen you use Rift a lot, 𝗙𝗥𝗘𝗦. What are your top plugins that you use?
Yeah, I mean,
regularly?
I used to use Trash for everything on distortion wise. It has some really powerful like convolve spatial effects to it. Since then, I've just gone to town. I bought a few plugins. Thermal, I've got Rift. They all do very similar things, and so I probably got about 3 of the same plugin, which you don't need. But Rift is really cool for creating additional sort of textured artifacts to basses that you've already got, and not just basses, any synth in general. But it's still really powerful in making variations. So literally, I sometimes have Rift off for the first section of a bass, and then when I want variation, I turn Rift on, and it sounds like a completely new bass. So that sort of A and B corner response is quite powerful, just using automation. And then key other ones, mainly it's Rift, 𝗙𝗥𝗢𝗟𝗏, and then knock. I know we were talking about the master before. It's so good for drums. It just glues everything together. It's got transient sort of boosting here, as well as a top end, so it really brightens up the sound. And so I just put that on the master, and it gives it a really clean sounding master.
Yeah, so why don't we jump into that? So I'm always curious about how producers get their masters to sound loud and clear. Loudness, in terms of DJ music, we always want to try to get it as loud as possible, but when we get it loud, sometimes we sacrifice clarity, and sometimes we get even distortion. So what do you do to get your tracks nice and loud?
Yeah, so I usually so I have everything in groups. So you can put all the drums in one, the basses in the other, and then I try and achieve -9 dB. So I drop everything down in the groups and then fine tune within the groups to make sure the levels are sounding right. Usually it's about sort of -13 on each one of these. And then I just check on the master. So I've got this free here. This will show us how loud we are. So yeah, ranges, but around sort of -8 dB.
And that's before
then
you've added any processing on the master.
This is I've turned everything off.
Okay.
And then put on knock, which has got a clipper on it, so you can use standard clip is another one I use as well.
Okay, so this knock is a clipper.
Yeah, so it's got sort of 5 effects to it, but it's got a really nice clipper, and you can do it hard clip or soft clip, but you can sort of have it in between. It's got this, which is mainly for drums. It just brings out the transients. Right. And then this is what I use it for. It's got a nice sort of top end, really clean sounding. So this is without knock first, and then I'll do it with on. So and this is with it. So then we're hitting about, you can see on here, -10 LUFS, but I feel like we can always squeeze a little bit more out of that.
Yeah.
And this is where I've got Pro L2,
Okay.
which is just sort of, it's boosting whatever is.
So
I think I've actually driven out that too high.
Yeah.
and then I finish with the sausage fattener, which seems criminal.
Can you show us your settings for the L2?
Yeah, of course. It's just literally just up 3 decibels.
And you turn on true peak limiting.
Yes, I think that might just be the default though.
Okay. All right.
And then we can see on the limiter, so it's... But when you're trying to get, it's almost clipping to the point where it's not distorting, but you can still get a little bit more out of it. And this is where sausage fattener, you don't put anything on, just like that at the end of a master.
Wow, did nothing on, and it still does something?
Yeah, and this is what 𝗙𝗟𝗢𝗏 actually says he swears by, is having sausage fattener on the master. So if you see now, so it's got us to about -8 lufs, which is different to decibels. It's peaking above.
Okay, so is that so the sausage fattener is, even though all the settings are set to 0 on sausage fattener, it's still adding some loudness?
Yeah, the way I look at it, it's almost like you're running it through like an analog mixing desk, where it's almost it's doing nothing but going through the hardware itself, the wires or the it gives it that crunch, that boost to it.
Yeah, it's adding harmonics or doing something to the signal.
It's doing something. I don't know what exactly. Yeah. And then I have an EQ. So I think Skrillex talked about this. Is basically anything above 15K is just too bright.
Oh, so you shave that off.
So yeah, I mean, I've only started doing this recently, but you should probably do it at the bottom as well. So you don't need anything below like 20.
And interesting, you put this later in the chain.
That might be wrong. I'm still obviously learning. And to be fair, no, there is one here. Look, there you go. Okay. I think I've just done it again. Okay. because the knock brings out the high end.
Right. So you may have to do it again. Yeah, I get it.
So you may just have to taper it down a little bit. So that's why I might have done it here. And I've also added a multi-band. So it responds when there's
dynamic
sound.
EQ. Yeah.
Dynamic. That's the one. Yeah. And then the last step is soothe. This is just a beautiful plugin. It just soothes everything out. If there's a bit of resonance or de-essing, it just de-esses the master. That's the preset I've gone for.
Okay. And I see there's an auto filter at the end. Is it what?
This is, I don't know what that's doing. I don't think that's meant to be there.
Maybe it's not needed.
Yeah, I think it was maybe when I was finishing a preview of the song, so I just whacked that at the end.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
to shorten it.
Yeah, really interesting to see. Yeah, really interesting to see how, because every producer has a different method to get their sound at their loudest, right, for the final product, and I like to see how everyone does it, and really interesting to see that. I think the big takeaway for me was seeing you use sausage fattener. I've heard a lot about that plugin, but I've never really explored it, but it seems like it may be that secret sauce, right?
It's an iconic plugin. I do love just the simplicity of it, the one knob, and then the animation of it as well. It's just so hilarious.
Yeah,
we've evolved by where the new sort of sample packs and stuff are going on. I'm sort of separating onto Evolve Audio. We're gonna try. We've already got some plugins in the work. I'm not gonna spill too much of the tea, but we're making some of our own plugins, and yeah, we're really excited to get them out this year, hopefully. To sort of take inspiration from people like 𝗙𝗟𝗢𝗪 and just to try and sort of simplify shortcuts. If you have a bottleneck in producing, if you have to do sort of 3 steps, and you could solve that by a plugin that just does that, shortens it to 1 step, I think that's a good thing in producing. So that's what we're trying to aim for, evolving the sound production.
I definitely appreciate tools that can save time, because if we can spend more time being creative without spending all that time setting up the project, right, then you can get a lot more done.
And there's also a caveat to that. It's like, what point is it laziness? Because some people like doing the work, but for me, when everyone knows how to automate, like Ender Smile is another one that 𝗙𝗟𝗢𝗪 did as well, and this one is is just, everyone knows how to do a low cut and an auto filter. Everyone knows how to automate reverb, but this just does it 2 in 1. And I use it for just when I'm just builds, and I put it on a group with pads, let's say, or if it's drums sometimes, and it's just a nice easy knob to change, and does 2 settings at once, and that's all it is.
I heard about it. So that's a tool you can use to create, I guess, build-ups and risers, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
But for the technical stuff, I think that's where we should sort of focus on is sort of bouncing out different sounds. Try and use Foley a lot. That's what I've been trying to do. Use your iPhone mic and record. It could be a chair squeaking on the floor, which you can pitch down an octave and then add distortion. If you really like, I think you can probably make cooler sounds out of just bird noises and pitching them down sometimes than spending 2 hours on Serum making the same thing. So I wouldn't limit sound design just to Serum.
I fully agree. It's having those sounds that nobody else can access. Your sounds that are personal to you, like recordings, and adding that to your music would just make it sound that much more unique.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's I think that's it's one of the coolest things about producing, is that you can make something completely unique. That whereas someone else, if they got the same sample, they'd flip it in a different way. And just having fun with it, mate. That's the key. That's why we all do it. That's why we're here today. Just having fun with flipping sounds into our own little sounds, eh?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Eloquin, really appreciate you showing everyone the techniques that you personally use. I always encourage producers to learn from a multitude of artists and producers, because everyone has a different technique, and the more different techniques and perspectives you can take in, the better producer you can become. So definitely thank you for coming on to the channel and showing us. And also make sure to check out Eloquin's music. You can find him on Spotify. We'll leave the links down below. Not to mention his new sample pack, which is out already. And his pack can be used for a multitude of genres. It includes audio samples and preset packs, and you can also find that down in the links below. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I think just thank you so much for having me on. Just keep creating. I think maybe one more bit of advice was, me and my friends have a group chat of producers, and I think, as you said, learning from other people, learning from collaboration. That's probably been the most fundamental thing is, oh, boys, what do you think of this? Or, what? And by getting that honest feedback, not, oh, this is sick, mate. It's, oh, actually, I think this bit's a little bit harsh here, and just being critical and just obviously honest. I think that really, really helps. So having a Discord community, I've actually started a Discord. I don't think there's many people in it, but hoping to grow that, and I'm sure you might have one as well. Having a community where people can just put their songs in and get feedback is so important in developing their sound as an artist.
Yeah, 100%. We'll leave a link down below for your Discord as well. And yeah, fully agree. Having a strong support circle where people can be honest with each other, that's a really great way to grow and learn.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you, brother, and we'll talk soon.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed watching Eloquin's personal production techniques. Comment down below and let me know which techniques you enjoyed most. Also, let me know what other producers you'd like to see on this channel. If you want to support this channel directly, you can check out deviantaudio.com or the links down below for preset packs, sample packs, and Ableton kits to help you along your journey. For more sound design videos, check this playlist up here. To learn more about drum and bass drum programming, check this playlist up here. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and until the next video, peace out.